measuring lifestyle via wearables, lab work, et cetera, can show the progression of whether what you're doing is working or not. Are there biomarkers that you like to track? And are there wearables that you think provide valuable info that are worthwhile for lifestyle changes?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And as you say, more and more of these sort of digital aids are coming on board. I mainly work in the National Health Service, and so there's sort of limitations on what's available. But when it comes to laboratory measurements, it's the usual ones that are related to cardiovascular health predominantly, although we know have wide-reaching impact for the rest of our chronic conditions and the risk of getting chronic conditions. So blood glucose, cholesterol, and making sure thyroid function is adequate, and vitamin D level is adequate, and obviously B12 if you're on a 100% plant-based diet. Obviously, then they're sort of measuring weight and waist circumference is often a better measure than body mass index and blood pressure. So I don't really overcomplicate things. I think certain individuals do find it, good to have a blood pressure monitor at home or a step counter or find these things motivating. But I personally don't use so many of them in my personal practice.
Thank you so much for that, Doctor. And up next, we are going to bring on Michelle. Michelle, I'm unmuting you now. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Kassam. I actually saw you in Toronto at the Canadian Plant-Based Health Professionals Conference. Thank you for all that you do. I'm wondering why you had potatoes on the unhealthy list, because as you know, other plant-based doctors are touting potatoes as potentially healthy. We know that blue zones often consume them, but I realized that purple is going to be healthier, but really curious as to what research led you to put it there.
Yeah, so not my research. So we have to blame the Harvard School of Public Health, who have actually contributed so greatly in this field of healthy diet and lifestyle medicine. So not really having a go at them. But really, this index was created from their studies. So predominantly the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study. So by no means a plant-based cohort, not a vegan cohort. Less than 1% of their participants are following a vegan diet. So in their cohorts, they have published studies showing that potato consumption increases the risk of high blood pressure, overweight, and type 2 diabetes. Now, I fully appreciate that in the context of a healthy plant-based or vegan diet, that's generally not the case. And so I'm not against eating potatoes as part of a varied, healthy diet. And they've got, lots of benefits in terms of nutrients and fiber and providing satiety. Some people do obviously mention the higher glycemic index of potatoes, but we know that if you cook them and cool them down and then reheat them, that can address some of that. But yeah, I wouldn't be fearful. It's a quirk of this plant-based dietary index that was created by the Harvard researchers, and that was in their scoring system. It's regardless of the way you cook it, because that's what their results showed. But I don't think you can translate that completely over to healthy plant-based cohort, which is not what the score was developed for.
Thanks very much for that, Doctor. And up next, we have Stephanie P. And welcome, Stephanie.
Hi. So my father has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it's so frustrating because the doctors that he goes to have been telling him, because he's undergoing chemo, they've been telling him, because he doesn't like the fact that he's losing weight. So they've been telling him, eat whatever you want, eat lots of food, eat lots of stuff. And it's frustrating to watch the chemo help kill the cancer, and then he's eating like processed sugar, red meat, everything he can get his hands on to keep the weight up. And then when I try to tell him, like the plant-based diet can help, cure all this, or, aid the chemo and stuff, he doesn't really listen, because he's like, well, those are the doctors, and who are you? How do you know? So do you have any advice of anything I could say to get through to someone who's skeptical, or anywhere to point him in the direction of that might kind of like, help change his mind?
Yeah, I feel your pain, and I find that for my patients as well, that many dietitians, not all, we have wonderful plant-based dietitians here in the UK too, but many do just reach for calorie-dense foods when it comes to supporting people to regain weight. And obviously we know that animal foods are more calorie-dense than the plant foods. And it's a shame, because clearly, after curing lymphoma, hopefully the biggest risk is of then heart disease and second cancers, which we know can be reduced in risk by adopting a plant-based diet. It's really hard. I think, you have to lead by example. There's so many books out there that support a plant-based diet for living well after a diagnosis of cancer, the great documentaries that are out there. If you're based in the US, then you guys have plant-based telehealth that's accessible for appointments, and also other wonderful plant-based practitioners that maybe if your father's willing to make an appointment with. But it's not difficult to find evidence and information telling us that red meat is really not good for our long-term health. We've got a fact sheet on our website actually that I'll pop into the link, our fact sheet section, about how to gain weight healthfully on a plant-based diet. There's also a great resource from a Canadian charity called the Gilder Club that has great recipes, and I'll try and just pop that in the chat just shortly as well. So very much endorsing plant-based with their cancer charity, with a dietitian that's created lots of healthy recipes and also got tips for gaining weight.
Thank you so much for that, Doctor. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in our next question, which is from Ainsley. Welcome, Ainsley.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Ainsley from Trinidad. Doctor, I would love to hear your interpretation on saffron threads. And if there was one food that, I don't want to use the word defeat or stop or diminishes or destroys cancer, which one do you think we can reach for in our cupboard? Saffron threads and, I don't know, a food, vitamin, berry. Tell us.
Well, so I'm not aware of the data on saffron threads, I'm afraid, in cancer. So you might have to enlighten us. I will have to go back and look up. I mean, obviously, lots of herbs and spices, great for so many things, but I haven't read anything on saffron threads, so I've got homework to do. So apologies for that. If I was made to choose my top cancer preventing food, I think based on the data that I've read, I would have to say the cruciferous vegetables, so the broccoli and kale and cabbage and Brussels sprouts and that family, because the data we have and the science is quite strong for the anti-cancer properties. But as I say, I'm more one for lots of variety and not talking about superfoods.